but the first time that I participated in a broad Nordic peace discussion was in 2010, when the International Peace Bureau celebrated its 100 years since the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo. We had good intentions of furthering the Nordic cooperation. We promised, and we failed to do so. With the Nordic peace and culture trip to Russia in 2015, many of us came closer to each other. And with the following two Russian Nordic conferences in Oslo, the network became broader and stronger. At the opening of the Oslo conference, I borrowed Leonard Cohen's words from his song, The Anthem. There is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in, hoping that the conference would be such an enlightening crack. And now we are here on a new arena, and this time I would like to quote the Persian poet Rumi when he says, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." And I hope that we, during these days, will develop this field and get out of the black and white polarized thinking of us and them, the good and the bad, and develop our own field based on friendly cooperation and open, honest, and respectful discussions. During the last months, as the horrible war in Ukraine has saddened and worried us deeply, and the political tension and polarization in society has become overwhelming, and the freedom of expression severely limited, the Nordic and the international peace-related webinars have been essential, at least to my mental survival. Finding some inner peace is important for the grounding we all need as individuals, not to be overwhelmed and destabilized by the present-day war rhetoric, war propaganda, disinformation, hate speech, fake news, and creation of enemy images. When politicians, the media, most of academia march to one tune, and the intellectual and spiritual loneliness has become heavy to shoulder, then the fact of knowing you, fellow peace activists in the different Nordic countries, knowing the IPB friends all over the world, knowing a pacifist hiding in Kiev, a feminist struggling in St. Petersburg, a peace researcher talking truth to power in New York makes all the difference. And perhaps that is the reason why we are so many here today. We actually need each other. We need each other as friends, as individuals, as members of peace organizations with a clear anti-war stand, as persons with dreams and visions of a just and peaceful world, as people with knowledge, experience, and energy that we are willing to share in order to try to make the world a slightly better place. And we need each other to understand more and hopefully become stronger, be a reliable and valuable dialogue partners, highly valued, and also able to influence policy makers. And we will have to go to Iceland for the meeting in October. I very much look forward to our days together here in Helsingør, with the possibility to go in depth on challenging issues. When we, after the 2 days of discussions, will form and formalize a Nordic Peace Alliance, we will have defined some goals and have established a structure and a plan. Still, several challenges may remain related inter alia to resources to run the alliance, division of tasks between us, discussions as to the mandate for the spokesperson of the alliance, agreement as to what should be our main knowledge base, development of effective strategies to reach our goals, and perhaps not least in these divisive times, how to tackle disagreements. How to tackle disagreements may turn out to be important to discuss. I am fully convinced that working to prevent war is on top of all our priorities, using the different tools in our toolkit and acting in accordance with our own competence and capacity. But when we fail so terribly as we have done now and end up with a war, it's not so obvious anymore. Already during World War I, the peace movement was split, despite the fact that the peace movement was particularly strong in the second part of the 19th century. Some monumental leaders, thinkers and artists had formed national peace societies, and we can proudly note that the Nordic countries were among the first. SPAS, Svenska Freds, was established in 1883 by Claes Pontus Arnoldsson, who received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1908, not least for his contribution to hindering a war between Sweden and Norway. Norges Fredslag was established in 1883. Bertha von Suttner headed the Austrian Peace Society, the very important one, and she was central to the group who established the International Peace Bureau in 1891 to coordinate the activities of the national peace associations and to organize universal peace congresses. And we all remember how Bertha von Suttner influenced Alfred Nobel and managed to convince him to make a prize also for peace, in accordance with the ideas developed in the peace societies at the time. Nor can we forget her groundbreaking book, Die Waffen nieder, Down with the Weapons, where she urges us to develop, and I quote, an active disgust for war. As we know, some of these early peace organizations are still active. We are guardians of peace history and fountains of experience that can help us gain insight into peace theories and practical strategies. The International Peace Bureau at the time worked on the development of international law, disarmament, and peaceful settlements of conflicts, and promoted the idea of the establishment of what became the League of Nations and the International Court of Justice. But the terrible World War I was a serious setback also for the peace organizations. Some members continued the work, but others felt it was difficult not to take a side with their own government or their close surroundings. Pacifism came to stand against patriotism. Then, as now, patriotism in times of war risked to be defined very narrowly as the willingness to kill and to be killed for your country. Today, the mainstream narrative on the war in Ukraine has made it difficult for many. One, not to side with sending ever more lethal weapons to Ukraine. Two, not to support NATO despite its overwhelming military arsenal and its nuclear first strike doctrine and aggressive expansion. And three, even slightly bringing up the issue of the role of the United States of America and the West in the war and the Rand Corporation's plan for destabilizing Russia. Peace, reconciliation, dialogue, ceasefire and negotiations are certainly not easy to bring to the table these days, as the hawks in the East and the West take over the narrative. Alternatives to war, and there are many, are silenced, overlooked, ridiculized. Military experts tell us day after day, even without any visible hesitation, what is wrong and what is right. If Mahatma Gandhi had been with us now, he may well have repeated his warning that an eye for an eye just makes the whole world blind. We risk to end up in inhuman, undemocratic societies where the young are captured in a confrontational, militaristic way of thinking and behaving. In Norway, a recent poll showed that more than half of the students in upper secondary school did not even dare to express their opinions. It is high time to replace the old patriarchal model of economic growth, militarism, domination, competition, control and confrontation that ultimately risks to lead into apocalypse. It is time to acknowledge that it is only through disarmament and peaceful relations that we may manage to solve the ecological and social challenges facing us. It is time to acknowledge that it is the military-industrial complex that is the enemy, not our neighbors. Militarized security builds on distrust and suspicion. The culture of peace and human security build on trust and cooperation. We need to strengthen the world's fragile peace architecture and not let provocative and humiliating rhetoric hamper international dialogue and diplomacy. The hallmark of the peace movement has always been to have good knowledge and insight and guts to speak the truth. But where is the truth nowadays? It is extremely difficult to know. Algorithms make us believe what the dominating trends want us to believe. Not only words, but also images and videos may be fake, false, or disorienting. Many things are outside democratic control, and military security and the so-called defense is the black hole of our democracies. Resources vanishes in this black hole, and people feel alienated. In these times of war and tension, when it becomes difficult to understand what is true and what is false, it is particularly important not to lose sight of direction, but keep alive the vision and the dream of the kind of society we want for our children, grandchildren, and for all the children of the world in 10, in 50, or 100 years. We need good strategies and plans to be able to build back better, as the UN is framing it, after years of mistrust, suspicion, and fear created through the long war on terror, through financial crises, a worldwide pandemic, making even breathing together dangerous, and now with the war in Europe with broad and disastrous ramifications. It is not easy to avoid being overwhelmed by the multiple interlinked and existential crises facing humanity, be it the climate and environmental crisis, the extremely unequal distribution of wealth and possibilities, or the growing nuclear threat. Giving in to pessimism and apathy will, however, take us nowhere. We cannot allow the destruction of humanity and our beautiful planet, and consequently cannot accept a continued misuse of the world's resources, natural, financial, and intellectual, for military purposes. The excessive military spending cannot provide the security we want. The military actually makes us less safe, both economically and ecologically, by taking so much of the resources and land that are needed for other purposes, and by the enormous greenhouse gas emissions, radiation, pollution, and, in short, the ecological catastrophe it brings. The International Peace Bureau, the International Trade Union Corporation, and the International Palme Center in Stockholm developed an updated version of the famous report of the Olof Palme Commission on Disarmament and Security from 1982 that was, as we know, quite instrumental in guiding the world out of the last Cold War. The new report helped us understand that if one country builds a strong military, the neighbors will be afraid and will do the same. Then the others get scared and continue to militarize with the risk of an endless spiral of militarization, profiting only the arms industry and the big powers. This new common security plan builds on well-known UN principles, such as freedom from fear and need, disarmament and confidence building measures, respect for international law, dialogue and conflict prevention measures. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic opened our eyes to our fragility and our interdependence. That might hopefully make it easier to understand that nobody is safe unless everybody is safe. Comparisons between social and military spending are shocking. Anybody having the courage to look into the data would understand there is no option but to disarm if you want to develop, even to survive. As you may know, 8 days of the world military spending is enough to provide 12 years free, high-quality education for all the children of the world. The strength of countries should not be measured by their show-off of weapons, but by the caring they do for people and the planet. War is obsolete and should never be an option. It kills and maims, destroys infrastructures and livelihoods, and sends millions on the run. It should be in the dustbin of history. The suffering and horrors of war are weighing us all down. People are dying and infrastructure and agricultural land devastated. Additionally, the multilateral system is weakened and risks failing humanity and the vision of a world without war. More than ever, we need to bolster the authority of the UN and unlock all its potential, as well as help strengthen people's sense of being not only good human beings, but also good world citizens. The UNESCO UN Cultural Peace concept was groundbreaking. It was a major rethinking of security strategies. It opened up a new vision for the future. Highly diverse groups founded the Cultural Peace, a platform for fruitful exchange and mutual inspiration. The culture of peace is defined as the values, attitudes, and behaviors that rejects violence and endeavors to prevent violent conflicts by addressing their root causes, with a view to solving problems through dialogue and negotiation among individuals, groups, and nations. The concept encompasses not only peace as the absence of war, however important that is, but focuses on the content and the conditions of peace. The Cultural Peace Program, with its 8 major pillars, guide the building of a culture of peace through education, not least, sustainable social and economic development, respect for human rights, gender equality, democratic participation, tolerance and solidarity, free flow of information and knowledge, and international peace and security. The UNESCO UN Cultural Peace Program is actually a blueprint for an alternative security policy. Hopefully, it will prove possible to link the cultural peace thinking more closely to the implementation of the very important UN Sustainable Development Goals as well as the Paris Agreement on Climate and the Montreal Treaty on Biodiversity. Friends, it is time for the weapons to fall silent. It's time to strengthen the role and possibilities of the peace movement. The world does not need deterrence, but cooperation, healing, beauty and justice, and we have work